All right, welcome back. Another episode, College Kids Talking College Sports, and we got a big special guest for our show today. Our good friends over there at the Boomer Bust Podcast. I called them up. I said, send me your best guy, and they delivered. We got PJ Clark from the Boomer Bust Pod. We're talking about little NFL draft. Should they stay or should they go to the league? PJ, what's going on, buddy? Good to join us.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm excited. I don't know if I'm the best we have to offer, but I'll take the compliment.
Some guy named, I think his name was Tate or something weird like that, picked up and said we'll send our best guy over. So we got PJ on the show. The points here. DeGeorge is not here. He's ice skating probably somewhere doing something.
Hey, it's our best versus their best. That's how it works.
Yeah, we got our best guy, Nathaniel Point versus Boomer Bust best guy, PJ Clark, and we're talking. Should these guys have gone to the league or should they have come back to college? We'll start right off the jump. LaPointe, I'll start with you. Home field advantage. Chris Olave, he just opted back into Ohio State. Should he have come back or should he have gone to the next level?
I'm kind of indifferent on this one. I could have seen it go both ways, and he benefits both ways. This is a very deep wide receiving draft this year, a receiving core draft. I think he benefits from coming back due to the fact that he didn't have a big sample size this season from the Big Ten shortened season. The SEC and the SEC wide receivers have more game film, had a bigger season, had a longer season, so they have more to show. I don't think it hurts Chris Olave to come back. The only thing I'm somewhat worried about is who's going to be his quarterback next year. He had Justin Fields for the last 2 years. I don't know who he's going to have throwing to him next year, and that's what somewhat concerns me. But I'm okay with him coming back because I don't believe that what he put on tape this year reflects what he can really do, and didn't help his draft stock.
I was surprised. I mean, just like a stunner. Did not expect that at all after, especially a great Sugar Bowl against Clemson. Nobody really expected Chris Olave to go back, but I think what he did for me, he was going to be a borderline first-round pick in this year's draft. I think he's firmly in the round one conversation for next year now. I think he's probably moved from the 26 to 36 range this year, an early second-round pick, late first. Now he's probably in the upper 20s. I still don't think he's a top 20 guy. I don't think he's a top 3 receiver in next year's class, but and the most surprising thing to me, he's not the best receiver on Ohio State that's draft eligible for next year because they got Garrett Wilson, who's probably wide receiver 1 in next year's draft. So it was surprising. He's going to make marginally more money, but it's costing him another year of his life. But I think what really happened was he saw Devontae Smith, who could have came out and been a first rounder last year, go back for his senior year, and we all know what happened then. So I think Devontae is going to kind of set a precedent for some of these second tier senior guys from now on.
I also think, to move on to PJ's point here, or kind of to tag on, he's not. I don't think people see Chris Olave as worth a first round pick this year. After you saw, Jalen Waddle is unbelievable. Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, I believe, is in this draft as well. Correct? Because he opted out halfway through the year.
Yeah, Jamar is in this draft.
Those are the top 3, and I don't think a lot of franchises are going to spend a first round pick on Chris Olave. In my eyes, he's going to be a late second round pick for a team that needs to boost their wide receiving core. I just don't think he is elite enough to make, to rationalize a first round pick or spending a first round pick on him.
Yeah, I mean, he was going to be a borderline guy either way. He was a top 40 guy for me. I would have taken him in the first half of the second round. You could have talked me into anywhere, like Baltimore's pick in 26. I thought that was a really nice scheme fit. I could have seen that happen. They don't have any wide receivers, but, he's a top 25 guy for sure next year, probably wide receiver 3 or 4. So he's going to make some money. He can't get hurt next year, which is going to be the real concern.
You know who Chris Olave, the more you guys are talking about it, the more the light bulb went off in my head. I know we're going out of order here, but he sounds like a lot similar to the position Travis Etienne was in a season ago. I'm going to go out of order here, but I'll go right back to PJ. Did Etienne spend a season too many at Clemson, and should he have gone to the draft a season ago?
I think in terms of NFL prospects, absolutely he did. He should have gone last year, but in terms of, set the ACC rushing record this year, set the all-time NCAA scoring record this year, there were things that he wanted to do that he achieved. He didn't win a national title, but he got his name all over the record books, which I guess if it's cool, is if you want it. But as a prospect, absolutely. I think he kind of wasted his opportunity. I bet you Kansas City would have taken him instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 32 last year. He would have been the only running back in my top 32 for last year. I would have had a first-round grade on him. And now you're looking at, after really a down season, didn't look too explosive, especially in the second half of the season. He's probably behind Najee. You could talk me into having him behind Javonte Williams. You're talking, all of these guys are going to go in the top 50 probably, whether they go in the first round or not. But you're talking a guy that went from RB1 last year and RB1 preseason to now probably RB3, which, it was that worth all the records. I hope so.
He absolutely stayed too long. PJ, he brought up the great points of he broke some records, which is like great, like hoorah, good for you. You can tell your kids one day that you have some ACC records that probably won't hold up by the time that your kids are around, old enough to remember that you did that stuff. But he absolutely stayed too long. I had him as a first round pick in last year's draft. Now I don't like him as much. I don't really like him at all. It kind of reminds me of what could be a Sony Michel situation in New England, where you were great. You left at the time that you should have, but that next year you didn't have the year that you should have. And that's what I kind of see from Travis Etienne. What also concerned me, and a lot of franchises I think are going to see this, is what did he do when Trevor went out? He had a terrible game against BC. He had a terrible game against Notre Dame, which I believe he rushed for under 30 yards in both of those games, had 2 costly turnovers that I believe went for 6 in each game. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't handle the load on his own. So I could see him. He's going to be, I think he went from, as PJ said, the first running back taken last year to maybe being a late second round pick and kind of being a backup running back in the NFL for a while.
And 32 yards on 10 carries in that national semifinal game against Ohio State in his last game in the NCAA. We went off the rails a little bit. We're going to go back on track. A guy that I hate and a guy that good friend PJ Clark loves, the Brock Star.
Party like a Brock Star, baby.
Brock Purdy. He's coming back to Iowa State, which we all know is my least favorite college football program.
Terrible.
PJ, should he have gone to the league, or are you happy he's back in Iowa?
I'm happy he's back in Ames for the sake of college football next year, because it means Iowa State's going to be pretty good again. They got Brock Purdy and Charlie Kohler back.
Not be good.
In addition to Breece Hall and Matt Campbell didn't leave. Iowa State not going away anytime soon, Cal.
I think Matt Campbell's the big one. Matt Campbell coming back is a lot bigger in my eyes than Brock Purdy coming back.
All right, so here's the deal. Brock Purdy had probably the worst first month of any quarterback in the entire country this year, like so pathetically bad. But turned it on. Looked great down the stretch. Beat Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. Like looked great in that game. Looked pretty good in the Big 12 championship. But yeah, I think he made the right call going back. I'm sad about it because I wanted to talk about him for the next 3 months. But at best, he's QB7 in this year's draft, right? He's after the clear-cut top 4, and then whatever order you have Jones and Trask in. At best, he's QB7. He's got to go up against Jamie Newman, Davis Mills, guys like that, and that 4th tier or whatever we're calling it. So yeah, I think he went back. Next year is going to be a deeper quarterback class. You got guys like Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, all guys that could have came out this year that are staying in. JT Daniels, who played half a season. So
Sam Howell too. You got Sam Howell in there too.
Well, at the very top, yeah. But you're talking that next tier down. I think Brock is going to beat QB7 next year. So yeah, I do think it's a good call by him to stay.
The way I look at it is, he was another Georgia comparison for you. It was going to be a Jake Fromm situation. Jake Fromm should have stayed. Brock Purdy stayed. He would have fell very far in the draft. And I believe that he made up his mind the minute they lost to the Raging Cajuns week 1. He had an absolutely abysmal performance against the Raging Cajuns at home to start the season. He was a Heisman favorite in the preseason. I believe he was a top 5. Wasn't he a top 5 in odds for a lot of places, I believe, for Heisman favorite. But he had an abysmal performance to start the season. As PJ mentioned, he came on strong in the end, had a great Fiesta Bowl performance, and Iowa State really started looking up, but it was too little too late. It was kind of like an A&M thing where just a loss pinned them in a hole that they couldn't get out of from the beginning of the year. So I absolutely think this is the right decision for Brock Purdy. I could see Brock Purdy having a Kyle Trask-like year next year where he can really flourish under Matt Campbell. Breece Hall is back, and I think that will be huge for him. I think he came into the season a little airheaded, and it was a nice wake-up call for him. He could do a lot of things next year to rise his draft stock instead of going in a late round and end up being the next Jake Fromm of the NFL.
But PJ, I'll throw this back to you. If he was QB7 this year and he's going to be around QB7 next year, what's the risk? Why would you risk getting hurt, and why would you waste a year like that?
I don't know if he's going to be QB7 next year. I think I don't know. I take him over Kenny Pickett. I love Kenny Pickett. I take him over Kenny Pickett. I'd probably take him over Corral, depending on how good Ole Miss is next year. Because Corral
Ole Miss isn't going anywhere either with Lane Kiffin's offense.
No. But Corral's just like, he's just a gunslinger. Like, he'll throw 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I think Brock is probably safer. I'm not taking him over JT. I'm not taking him over Rattler. But do I think Brock Purdy Brock Purdy will enter next year is probably my QB4. It's going to be between him and Ritter for that 4 spot.
I see him being as high as 3 and as low as 7 if he stays healthy. He can't get any lower than where he is now. Yeah. So I think it made a lot of sense to go back. He can really only improve his draft stock because he really hurt his draft stock this year. That in the end, that's what it was. And a guy like Ritter, who PJ said who has him at 4, I could see Ritter really hurting his draft stock. He's playing in the group of 5. If he doesn't have a great year and Cincinnati doesn't have a great year again, he could really get hurt. That's where a Brock Purdy can really flip the scale, but just by having a good year and keeping Iowa State in contention. But he's got to stay in the national spotlight. You can't lose a game to the University of Louisiana or someone like that in the beginning of the year because you're going to get written off, right? Just same thing you did this year, and then you're going to be, 7-8 quarterback off the board.
I mean, I think Desmond Ritter is a good one. We didn't even have on this list. I don't know why he's going back because, I mean, it would have taken – I wanted to rewatch that Peach Bowl against Georgia, but that performance really opened a lot of eyes. I was in on him before that, but that performance, I think he might have ended up over Trask for me.
His second half concerned me beyond belief.
Well, once their left tackle got out and Azeez Ojulari had whatever he wanted in the second half against that the German kid who had never played football before, things kind of went downhill. But I'm a Desmond Ritter guy. I do think Desmond Ritter is a starting quarterback at the next level. I think he's going to get a chance for somebody. But as you said, group of 5, I mean, things could go so horrifically wrong. And that's a guy that could easily tank. Whereas Brock, you're playing in a major conference on national TV every week.
Cal, I want to talk about this one quick because I want to talk about Desmond Ritter. I don't know. I can't believe that we forgot to put him on the list. PJ's 100% right. He went from someone that would have been a draft pick this year to someone who, if he has a bad year, he could be like a free agent signing. Like, that's what happens when you're in the group of 5. If you completely fall off, I could see him being a free agent signing if Cincinnati doesn't have a good year next year. I do. I really do. Especially with, PJ talked about how he liked him in the Peach Bowl. I didn't personally. I liked Cincinnati's defense in the Peach Bowl. Desmond Ritter didn't quite show up in the way that I wanted him to. Granted, Georgia has, I think, a tremendous defense, one of the best defenses in the country, and they didn't have that many opt-outs, which was big in that game. But he didn't put out the performance that I was looking for, but it wasn't bad. It didn't hurt his draft stock with the performance. I would have absolutely gone if I was Desmond Ritter.
All right, well, Desmond Ritter, I don't know about him going undrafted if he has a bad year for Cincinnati. I don't think I see that happening, but we'll move on. We're going to go to, some call him Grandpa. His name's Kellen Mond. He's been at Texas A&M since PJ was born. Why, if you've been there so long, why leave now, PJ? Why is he going to the NFL now?
So the running joke on draft Twitter is that Kellen Mond has played like 46 career games and still nobody knows whether he's even like remotely good or not. Like, nobody has any idea whether he's like,
absolutely no idea.
Like, even a good college quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback, but I don't even know if he was good for the last 7 years. Like, I can't actually tell you whether he was good or not. And for some reason, there were like 3 quarterbacks between Johnny Manziel and Kellen Mond. No, there weren't. Like, there weren't. Like, Johnny Manziel to Kellen Mond is how this worked.
Kenny Trill was in there, wasn't he?
Kenny Trill was in there for like 6 weeks at one point. Yeah.
Okay, that's I just said that was the only one I remember between Johnny Manziel and Kellen Mond.
Yeah, like I just have erased that entire period from my brain. Kellen Mond stinks. Like he's not good. He's gonna get drafted. I think next week's gonna be big for him. He's at the Senior Bowl. I think next week's gonna be pretty big for him. If I recall correctly, I think he's on the Panthers team, which also has Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. So he's going to be the worst quarterback on his roster, which is never what you want. But the Panthers have the best wide receivers. So maybe somebody will make him look good. I think next week's going to be really big for him. But, this is a guy that I don't know if I would draft, period. He's going to go on day 3. And somebody's going to talk themselves into a long-term starter. But I guess if you're that old and you've played that many games, you may as well go try to get paid for whatever you can.
I think PJ hit the nail. He sucks. He sucks out loud. He has been tremendous for Texas A&M. He is perfect for what Texas A&M has wanted to do. They got up to 5 this year, but I just don't see him having anything that resembles success in the NFL. He doesn't have stat lines.
Well, that's also it. As you just said it, and that's a good way to take it. I took it more from an NFL perspective, but from a college perspective, if you're Kellen Mond, you did about as good as you can do this year. You were the 5th best team in the country. You're never winning the SEC because you're never beating Alabama. So next year could have only gone worse from a team standpoint.
Yeah, and the way I see it is like it honestly depended on him. Did he want to spend another year in college? I don't think he'll ever see the field again. If I was him, you want to get paid. I don't think he'll really get paid that much. I think he's going to be a third day guy, as PJ said. If I was him, I would have just enjoyed college. I would have taken the joke, taking it lightheartedly, as you've been in college football for the longest, anyone's ever been there. You've had a good career. People, Aggie fans will remember you forever. You brought him to 5th this year. You looked good. He's hit his ceiling. So I guess it would be good for him to go, but he'll never see the field again. And he's just the most mediocre, successful quarterback I've ever seen. He has no ceiling. He's not very good. He doesn't throw the ball very hard. He's not a great game manager. He's found ways to win some years, but I leave this up to him.
He's an athlete is the one thing. Like he's got a big body. He's a big dude. He'll get packages. Like I guarantee you somebody will have some like QB power package for Kellen Mond, some smart team.
Could this be could any chance that he gets moved to wide receiver?
I doubt it.
No,
at least off the top. I think he's
not that good.
Frankly, I think he's too good of a quarterback for that.
I also don't think he's that good of an athlete, and he's not big enough. Like Tim Tebow was large. That's why you could put him at tight end. Malcolm Perry was fast and small. That's why you could put him in the slot. I don't see Kellen Mond as being a good enough. Not saying he's a great athlete. He's just not good enough, and he doesn't fit the mold. You can't put him in the slot. You can't put him in tight end, and he's not fast enough to run down the seam. So I don't. I
mean, listen, I could be wrong because I thought Logan Thomas was a good enough quarterback to stick, and now he's a pretty damn good tight end. So
yeah. All right, we'll move on. We're gonna go to our favorite Canadian running back, Chuba Hubbard, who had a spectacular season in 2019 and kind of put up a stinker. Didn't he opt out three?
Yeah, he left early.
So I don't know why he's going to the NFL draft because I think another year would do good for him. Do you disagree, LaPointe?
Travis Etienne hurt his draft stock, but I think Chuba Hubbard hurt it way more, opting out with 3 games left in the season after having an abysmal season. I mean, he was atrocious. They were not good. It was an opportunity for him to shine with Spencer Sanders out in the beginning of the year. It was his team. They were playing teams that they could beat in the beginning of the year, but the minute they started losing, he just said, fuck this, I'm out. I don't want any part of this. I'm not having success. We're not winning. So I'm going to go prepare for the draft. I think the best way for him to prepare for the draft would have been to come back in those last 3 games. Plus, I can't remember if they played in a bowl game. I feel like they did.
They did because Tylen left at halftime just for fun.
Yeah, they played out in Miami, and he could have used those 4 games to show that he was a gamer. He was a competitor. I saw him as soft, not the guy. Just like Travis Etienne, when Trevor went out, he couldn't be the guy. Chuba couldn't be the guy when Spencer Sanders went out and the Cowboys needed him. So I I think he should have absolutely come back. I don't like the way he handled it whatsoever. I think he hurt his draft stock.
And PJ, before you start, was it fair to say that Chuba Hubbard should have opted out from the jump, and that would have been better for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could have gone for a lot of guys. I know I have a couple later on that I want to hit in terms of just should have stayed opted out, because a lot of people did opt out and then come back once the Big Ten decided they were going to play. Chuba was opted out for like 3 seconds and then just decided he was coming back. I've never been a Chuba Hubbard guy. He was great last year, as you said. I never thought he's got legitimate track speed. Like he's like an all-state track runner. That's like his calling card, right? I never saw him as a special prospect. I thought he was always overrated throughout this entire process. And then I was kind of, shown right. But for running backs, especially, you're going to get drafted when you have that speed, guaranteed. He's going to get drafted high, too. He's probably not falling out of the fourth. I think even getting to the fourth would be a stretch.
Yep.
And then secondarily, the length of your career is so much shorter than everybody else. My opinion on the running back is anytime you think you are good enough to leave, you should not put any more mileage on your body. So, yeah, I wouldn't have played this year if I were him, but at least he did save 4 games of mileage. Listen, this year wasn't great, but he did enough last year. And I think a lot of teams, it might be a mistake, but I think a lot of teams are just going to be like, Corona, weird season, not put as much into the numbers this year. Guys have opted out. Like, as you said, the quarterback was hurt. Like, a lot of weird things happened with a lot of teams. I think people are going to make note of that. So I think Chuba is going to be drafted higher than his performance this year warranted. But yeah, I would have left after last year.
Well, he's not really a back that can go between the tackles too. So no. I think a lot of teams might look at a guy like Hubbard and say, if he can, granted he has to get better, but if he can be a solid receiver out of the backfield,
he's a home run hitter. He's got track speed. Like he can just break one off and you're going to be gone. So yeah, you got to make him a better receiver, which is not his strong suit currently. Yep. But there's potential.
I think the third down back position is something that he could fit into the mold of, but he's got to catch the ball.
I also think what PJ said is completely correct. I think everything that I said will be overlooked by NFL scouts and GMs, and just not because he did save mileage. They're going to come up with a million excuses if they want in the draft. They either kill you for one thing.
Yeah, listen, if somebody wants him, they will rationalize it however well they damn please.
Yeah. So you can rationalize him. I just, as an unbiased, I don't really have a huge opinion on him. Obviously I don't have a franchise. I don't have anything like that. So for me, it's an unnecessary risk that you're taking with Chuba Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard will stay in the Big 12. And this one is something that I wish Sam Ehlinger would be coming back to Texas with Steve Sarkisian over there. I just think it'd be fun to go to watch Steve Sarkisian and Sam Ehlinger work together. LaPointe, what do you think?
You stayed last year. The season you had this year was not good enough to go. You have a new offensive guru as a head coach. Tom Herman was not winning. I would give Steve Sarkisian a year. See if you can boost your draft stock, because your draft stock right now is, as PJ and I mentioned earlier, around that 7 spot. He's not going to get anyone excited, and he's going to be a backup in the NFL for a while. He'll need like a Colt McCoy situation where he'll be a backup and he'll need someone to get hurt in order to ever get on the field. I think he absolutely should have stayed because he's a talented individual. He loves Texas. He stayed last year, but he stayed this year, which I don't think he did anything this year that would have helped his draft stock. They lost too many close games. Some of his stat lines were sporadic in places. I absolutely think that Sam Ehlinger should have stayed, and is a huge missed opportunity to not play for Steve Sarkisian for a year.
I mean, I would like to see him with Sark. Definitely. Like, I think that would be great, but I think he made the right move. Listen, somebody is going to talk themselves into the 4-year starter from Texas. Like, somebody's going to draft him to be your Jake Fromm in the 5th round, like leader, high character guy. If you go back and you watch that Elite 11 from 5 years ago at this point, high character guy, played the most of his freshman year and then started every game from there on out. Like, somebody's going to talk themselves into the 4-year starter. The Texas kid, much like Colt McCoy, didn't have the I don't think he's going to have the NFL success of Colt McCoy. He didn't have the college success of Colt McCoy, but somebody's going to talk themselves in. And I mean, listen, he cut down the turnovers. He went 26-5 in 10 games this year, TD to interception ratio, which is way better than he was last year. So listen, it's worth a shot. Like, again, once you get to, coming out next year, you're going to be 23 years old, playing quarterback for 5 years, starting every game. It's a lot of mileage on your body. Somebody's going to talk themselves into the high character guy just to get him in the building. I mean, James Morgan went in the 4th round last year, so all bets are off from here on out.
I also want to throw it out there. Being a Kentucky guy, I very much listen to Coach Cal's perspective on going to the draft. When you can go to the draft, and if you can just make money, I think you should absolutely go. I'm saying this stuff as a person that is on the outside looking in at your career. If everything went perfectly, what could happen next year? But I absolutely understand why he'd go. He's been there for a while. The risk to reward's not really there. So the Coach Cal perspective is you absolutely go.
Just as a college football fan, though, I would love to see him and Stark.
Yeah, absolutely. But you got to make your money while you can, though. Especially with him, he's been there for so long that it's an unnecessary risk.
It's selfishly, I'd love to see it.
Oh, me too.
We'll move on, though, because, PJ, you have a bromance with this guy. You are a huge Trey Lance fan, and at times,
I am.
You had Trey Lance knocking on the door as the number 1 overall pick in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
But he only played 1 game this year.
Yeah.
Against our guy, dude. That's our guy.
Yes, against your guy. Yes, very true. UCA. Listen, Trey Lance is a phenom. I think the reports of Trey Lance's demise have been greatly exaggerated. I think playing the 1 game and not looking knockout kind of made people forgot how good he was. I mean, this is a guy that I had his QB2 entering the year, just based off of last year's tape. I had Daniel Jeremiah had him at QB1 entering the year. Like, this is a real player, and he's going to go way too low. People have him falling out of the top 10. I have QBs 1 through 4 on my board, and he's 4th. He would be my QB1 in any other year. It just sucks that there's maybe 3 guys better than him. Him and Fields are like 3A and 3B. But yeah, Trey Lance is gone. Should he have even played that 1 game? No, but it was fun to watch. He came in and off the street cold after not playing for 6 months and beat the number 11 FCS team in the country by 11 points.
Yeah, but
nice.
You said that in any other year he'd be number 1. Would he be number 1 next year?
No, because I think Sam Howell is another, I don't know. Him and Sam is a real battle.
If he's number 1 every other year and now he's number 4 on your board, you can make the case that.
No, because there's nothing left to show. He's been the best player in FCS for 2 years. There's nothing. He's going to go beat up on Butler again?
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
He wants to, if he could transfer to somewhere, but why would he ever do that? He's going to get picked. He's going to get picked too low, quite frankly, and I'm going to take my victory lap. I just hope he goes to Shanahan and the 49ers because that's the best fit. So let's make it happen.
Here's the way I see it is, as of right now, college football season is, it's come to an end, obviously, but people at this point are starting, he didn't play this season, so no one got to see film on him, but he didn't get any worse. That's the way I look at it, is not playing. You didn't get any worse. Maybe you didn't get any better, but you didn't get any worse. And he was a phenomenal talent. And
he's also, I do think there's something to be said. And I actually think it's going to look, we're going to get a look at it this week at the Senior Bowl with Jamie Newman. Those two have been working out with Quincy Avery, who's been a big quarterback trainer for the last couple of drafts. He's making a really big name for himself. He's a great Twitter follow. Those two have been working out every day in Atlanta since they both opted out, since after literally the Monday after that game against UCA, Trey declared and then went to Atlanta to work with Jamie Newman and Quincy Avery. So if Jamie Newman comes out and looks improved, as I think he probably will this week at the Senior Bowl, I think it's a huge week for Jamie Newman. I feel pretty good about Trey getting better, at least mechanically.
Yeah, Jamie Newman's a fool. I absolutely hate him. As a somewhat Georgia fan, he's an absolute buffoon. I think Trey Lance, so as we get farther and farther away from college football season, people will forget that he opted out. It'll just go off of straight talent from the tape that he's had in the years past. And I think he will absolutely be fine. And he will start moving up draft boards again. I think he falls under Mac Jones. I think it probably goes Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, and then Trey Lance. I think Justin Fields falls out. I don't like Justin Fields. That's just me.
That's a hot take.
And I
Take.
don't see the Jets. I don't see the Jets taking a quarterback.
Oh, don't bring up the. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting
the Jets are going to trade for Deshaun Watson, so I'm not worried.
Here we go. Now, don't bring up the Jets.
I don't see them drafting. I don't see that. I see them drafting more of an offensive lineman. They need help on the offensive line.
First of all, PJ, before we get into anything else, how long you've been talking to LaPointe for a half hour, and he's mentioned Georgia in every single sentence, and now he claims himself to be a somewhat Georgia fan. Like, come on, how BS is that? The kid loves Georgia. Don't look like
watch a lot. I watch a lot.
Georgia's going to win the Natty next year. So, well, I mean, it's a good time to be a Georgia fan.
The problem is, Scott, the same way you watch Syracuse, I watch Kentucky football and I watch Georgia football every weekend. It's not even a huge fan part. It's just like I find those teams interesting to watch. So a lot of the prospects I can.
Oh, buddy, I find Georgia really interesting to watch because Kirby Smart's an idiot, but we can get to that later.
I tend to agree with that statement.
Yeah.
Right.
Kirby's got to realize that he has George Pickens, who's a top 15 guy next year, and he has to realize he has a real quarterback and not Jake Fromm now because he calls terrible plays for that offense.
He wanted Stetson Bennett to start for that team all season.
Looking at JT, one of the best quarter. Don't get me started on JT Daniels. That's
Juwan Mathis did not get enough opportunity in Georgia.
Big moves for the Temple Owls this offseason getting Juwan Mathis.
All right, well, let's move on here. The tight end position, it's kind of Kyle Pitts, and then the word "and" comes after that.
Yep.
I think Hunter Long, who's a stud at BC, he's declared for the draft, but he's definitely not the number one guy in a year where Pitts owns the class. But I think he could be a top tight end in the draft. PJ, do you think he would have benefited from another year?
No. I think he was so absurdly good this year and made such a jump that it's smart to capitalize on it. This tight end class, much like every tight end class, sucks. Like, tight end is just not a really relevant position. Last year's was so pathetically bad. But so you have Kyle Pitts, who's like the greatest tight end prospect of all time. Cool, great, awesome. Pat Freiermuth is like a borderline first round guy. He's a top 45 guy for me. And then you have Hunter Long and Brevin Jordan, because now Jeremy Ruckert went back to Ohio State. So Hunter Long, again, BC was pretty good this year. He was great. He's got to do that again next year to get to the point of maybe being a second round pick where I think I have a third round grade on him right now. I think he's going to be more than fine. So I like Hunter Long a lot. He's a good athlete, caught, good yards after the catch this year. I think he's in a fight with Brevin for that tight end 3, whereas next year, I think at best he would be tight end 2. I think Charlie Kohler is from Iowa State, who would be my tight end 3 this year, is pretty firmly tight end.
Iowa State over there, huh? All roads lead back to Brock.
All roads lead back to Matt Campbell, unless you're the Jets.
Sucks. Don't let the facade fool you. LaPointe, Hunter Long, your thoughts?
Hunter Long reaped the benefits of the Jeff Hafley first year at Boston College. He should absolutely go. I don't see BC getting any better. They had a tremendous year. Jurkovic, I think, has hit his ceiling. He could get a little bit better, but Hunter Long just killed it this year, had led the NCAA in so many receiving categories for tight ends for a very long time. I don't know if he held them at the end of the year, but I had no idea who Hunter Long was before the season started. I absolutely know who Hunter Long is now. I think you absolutely go if you're Hunter Long. You reap the benefits from Boston College and the best that they could do for you. Your team's not getting any. You're not getting over Clemson. You're not getting over North Carolina. You're not getting over Miami. I think you absolutely go, without a doubt in my mind.
All right, well, let's now move on. We're going to go into, did they stay a year too long? We already talked about Travis Etienne, who, I think that he should have gone a season ago. I think we're all kind of in that ballpark that he might have hurt his draft stock a little bit. Marvin Wilson is an interesting name to be on this list because you know what you can't teach? You can't teach size. And Marvin Wilson is a monster. Yeah. I don't think him staying a year, not staying a year affects it at all because he does what he does, and that's plug up the run gap. Am I wrong there, PJ?
I think you are. You're not wrong, and that's what he does. But I think you're wrong in that he should have stayed opted out. Because I literally think the next 2 guys we're going to talk about, actually the next, 4 guys we're going to talk about, whatever. I think you're hard pressed to find a bigger faller than Marvin Wilson. Marvin Wilson was a top 15, like IDL 1 kind of guy, like first round pick slam dunk entering the year off of last year's tape. Showed up this year just like out of shape, lack of effort, didn't care. Florida State was a dumpster fire, which like whatever. I wouldn't want to play for Florida State this year either, but like just showed up like and he didn't want to play football and did not look good at all. Like Marvin Wilson went from like clear cut number 1 interior defensive lineman in this class to like, are we sure he's still in the top 10 positionally in just 1 year? Whereas if you stayed opted out, you'd probably be behind Barmore at the very least, but nobody would be the wiser in that you showed up out of shape and just not ready to play this year.
So where does she show up now in your mock?
So I have him at positionally, I think I have him at IDL 8, which is like, obviously a really big drop. I have a 4th round grade on him. Somebody's going to take him before that. I've never been a fan. I've been lower on him, throughout the whole process, but I would not take him on day 2. Somebody's going to, just based off of the 2019 tape. But
I think the 3rd round would be a steal for Marvin Wilson. LaPointe, do you agree with PJ that he should have not played this year?
I'll give you this. I had to look up who Marvin Wilson was to remind myself who he was. That's the type of year that Marvin Wilson had. When I have to do that, I'm a huge offensive guy, so I love offense. But the minute I have to look you up to remind myself who you are, that's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. I'm looking at his stat line from this year: 1 sack, didn't force any turnovers. His Florida State team sucked. There's no doubt in my mind that he should have opted out. That was a terrible year. And when I don't remember who the fuck you are, that's a problem. You absolutely should have stayed opted out.
I still think he'll be good in the pros.
He could be. He just definitely didn't help.
I think a 3rd round pick would be a steal because, like I said, you're not going to he's a monster. He's just huge. Like, I know the NFL guys are big, but Marvin Wilson's big, and I think he does his job in that stop the run.
We'll move on. But this is the thing with Marvin Wilson was like, he disrupts the court. Like he was like
his total tackles were down so much this year.
But if you're just playing conventional nose tackle, like the guy that you're describing, Cal, is Tyler Shelvin from LSU, who was another opt-out this year, who like reportedly showed up for spring ball at like 350, which is fine, I guess. If you're just playing like a 1 tech and you're only stopping the run and plugging like the holes, like fine, whatever. But Marvin Wilson allegedly was like this Quinnen Williams light, like interior pass rusher. It's like, no, he's not. No, he's not. And he never has been. But that's what everybody wanted to talk about him like.
17 tackles. Mike Norvell's first season at Florida State. Your team's not good. That didn't make a lot of sense. You should have stayed opted out. You hurt yourself. You could still be great in the NFL, but
he cost himself a lot of money.
He cost himself some money.
We'll move on.
I hope Florida State's putting a lot of money in that McDonald's bags these days, because that's where his money needs to be coming from right now.
Well, we'll move on to another guy that PJ you think should have stayed opted out, and that's Shaun Wade from Ohio State.
Well, Shaun Wade is the single biggest faller in this class, like period. Like not even remotely close. I mean, we could just go back, even if you want to take the vacuum of just the Sugar Bowl, where Cornell Powell just absolutely obliterated him. And yeah, Ohio State won the game, whatever. And then like whatever Devontae did to him, Devontae does to everybody. So whatever. It was just funny to watch because Shaun Wade is bad. But Shaun Wade is next in a long line of Ohio State corners, right? Denzel Ward, you had 2 in the first round last year. The problem with Shaun Wade is that you had 2 first-round corners on the outside last year, and Shaun Wade only played in the slot. Shaun Wade was very good at playing the slot. This year he showed up, was the number 1 corner on the depth chart, moved outside, and was, quite frankly, had no idea what he was doing. Absolutely no idea. He was terrible. It wasn't good. It didn't work out for anybody. So I think Shaun Wade definitely dropped. I don't think he's a first-round pick. I'd be surprised if he went in the second. I think we're talking third as another guy I have a 4th-round grade on. Somebody's going to take him as a slot corner, or I think he projects better as a safety. But if he wants to get drafted as this like outside corner, the tape is so egregiously bad that I wouldn't draft him before day 3. But if he opted out, nobody would know, and everybody would just assume that he could translate from the slot and be the next Okuda or Arnett and go. He wouldn't go top 3, but he would go in the top 20 just based off of like, oh, Ohio State corners, cool. And now everybody just saw him get absolutely torched by any wide receiver he lined up against outside.
It's so easy to say though, like, oh, you should have just stayed opted out. You would have made yourself a ton of money. But you go to Ohio State, and your team ended up playing in the national championship game.
The difference is Shaun Wade was opted out for like a month and then decided to come back. He could have just not done this.
Was it Shaun Wade's dad who said that they should play, and then they brought back, and then he said, "Fuck this, I'm not playing," and then they had to talk him into coming back to play?
Yeah.
He's a goon. He's an absolute goon.
You're on a team that you think can win a national championship. It would just be hard for me to sit at home with my feet.
Oh, I totally agree. And Max gets on Micah Parsons all the time because Micah Parsons would like live tweet Penn State games being like, why can't the defense do anything? And Max is like, the defense can't do anything because you're on your couch at home, you moron. And it's like, I get it. And you had a chance to win the national title game, but in the national title game, you were the reason your team lost. So how does that work out, Sean?
Yeah, I just think he is what he is. I mean, they try to do something with him that he's not. That's move outside. I think he would have stayed as if Ohio State would have played him as a slot corner all year. I think
he's like a pretty good tackler. Like I think there's no reason why he can't be a safety. But if we're drafting him as a corner, it's like I don't even think he's the best slot corner in this class. I think that's Elijah Molden. And then I go back and forth on whether I think Asante Samuel can play outside. I think he might be more of a slot guy. A lot of people disagree with me on that. But Elijah Molden is better as a slot corner, period, than Shaun Wade ever was anyway.
LaPointe, your thoughts on Shaun Wade?
I'm all out on Shaun Wade after this season. He should have stayed opted out, live tweeting from his couch. And to be honest, Justin Fields saved his ass in the semifinal, but Justin Fields was not far behind and screwing himself in the draft. I mean, in the end, it comes down to the Big Ten screwed these guys. They told them they're not playing. Shit, we're losing money. Let's start at the end of October. And it didn't set these kids up to succeed. But Shaun Wade got killed. I mean, in the end, he wanted no part of Devontae Smith. They were putting linebackers on Devontae Smith running straight up the seam because Shaun Wade wanted absolutely no fucking part of that. Like none. It was the most embarrassing. After talking all that shit, saying he's going to lock him down, Devontae Smith was the Heisman Trophy winner, was being covered by linebackers and running all over the field into wide open green pastures. I mean, it absolutely made no sense. And the entire time you're asking, where the hell is Shaun Wade? And has he shut his mouth yet? Because in the end, they got blown out. He sucked. And his draft stock got hurt. I'm not high on Shaun Wade whatsoever. I think he could have been a Trey Lance-like situation where he had a good year last year. The less tape on him, probably the better after what happened this year. So he should have absolutely stayed opted out.
Just a quick aside, I want to throw this back because you're saying guys who should have stayed opted out. I think Jamie Newman. I don't want to throw it. I just think Jamie Newman was it good that he opted out, or was it? Do you think he should have played? I just want to throw that out. A quick one off the side. Do you think Jamie Newman should have played this year?
Should have played. Looked like an idiot. He was healthy. JT Daniels was supposedly hurt, and that's why Kirby Smart did not start him. He looks like a kid afraid of competition, and he was afraid of, and we saw it. DeJuan Mathis came in at number 1 on the depth chart in that game against Arkansas. He was terrible. He was saved by Stetson Bennett, who put up 14 points against Kentucky. Kentucky's got a great defense, but those kids were not they were not good, Division I Georgia quarterbacks. They weren't a fit to be in that position. So it makes me question what the hell happened with Jamie Newman at Georgia. I have more questions with him opting out after seeing those two play than I did before with him. I don't even I guess I just have a lot of questions with him.
I go back and forth because the Wake Forest tape was like fine. He was all right. Like I would draft him. I would draft him like where he's going to get drafted off of the Wake Forest tape right now. Like it's totally fine. Like, and I do think he's going to have a good week at the Senior Bowl. I think he might have the most to gain next week. But I don't know. I said preseason that if I were Kirby, and JT was healthy, I would play JT. I thought JT had a higher ceiling, just because I am JT Daniels believer. I mean, one of the best recruits in the history of college recruiting. Got kind of a raw deal at SC, got hurt, but if he was healthy, I felt like he had a higher ceiling than Jamie Newman, and JT did play really well down the stretch. I think JT should be the smart bet for Heisman next year. I think Georgia should be the smart bet for the national championship based off of the way they finished the year. But I don't know. Jamie Newman, I think, has a lot to gain. I don't know if he's got that much to lose this week, but he can solidify like first guy after the top 6. Or I mean, if Mac and Trask are going to be there, like if he can outplay those two in front of NFL scouts, I think we got a real competition going.
Here's the big thing for me. I think the Senior Bowl will be big, but I think even bigger will be his interviews when he goes in for interviews. Because he, as I said, he's got a lot of questions to answer. His departure from Georgia was loud and it made absolutely no sense as the season went on. Obviously, JT Daniels was hurt. So it's not like he lost the quarterback position to JT Daniels. He did not want to compete against DeJuan Mathis and Stetson Bennett, who is a JUCO transfer and walk-on at the University of Georgia who happened to be put on scholarship. So he's got a lot of questions that he has to answer about character. Again, some NFL franchises probably will not care about that. But for me, not having to put my name on any of these things, my first question would be his character and why he left.
Yeah, to me, it shows a lack of guts. Like, I think Jamie Newman knew that JT Daniels was a better quarterback than him and didn't want to face the competition of going in there and trying to compete for a starting job. I honestly think it's smart that he opted out because it didn't help his draft stock in a season where if he would have took Georgia,
dude, if he lost that job mid-season,
he would have plummeted.
Man,
it would have plummeted. But if he would have won that job and Georgia would have been knocking on the door in the college football playoff, he could have risen. So he decided to stay stagnant, not take the risk. It showed me he doesn't have the heart to compete for a starting job. And I mean, I guess it's smart because if he would have lost, we would have talked about him. I don't even know.
But in my opinion, it's not like the Trey Lance situation though, because Trey Lance he played in the game, but even if Trey Lance didn't play, his stock would have stayed exactly the same. The lack of heart and the lack of wanting competition from Jamie Newman, I think, actually hurt him.
We'll move on. We'll move on from Jamie Newman. Dylan Moses at Alabama. Did he stay a year too long, LaPointe?
I'm an offensive guy. As we all know, if you listen to our podcast, I just love offense. Dylan Moses is for me. His whole career was for me. The Alabama defense this year was definitely down and people were ripping them apart. Granted, they ended up winning a national championship and defense in college football is on the downward anyway. No, I think he's fine. I think he could have opted out and been fine. He won a national championship. So is he really a loser for it? What's his face? I'm blanking on his name. The Patrick Surtain had a great year for Alabama, and really he had his draft stock rise. And maybe that's what hurt Dylan Moses was he was no longer the guy on the Alabama defense. He's not the first one that comes to mind. Patrick Surtain is. So I think he's fine. Again, this is a year where you could have opted out and no one would have cared. I mean, it's not hurting draft stocks to opt out. I don't think it hurt him to stay either. It's just kind of for me.
Dylan Moses stinks, which is fine. So this is a guy that had a great year 2 years ago, like a phenomenal year 2 years ago. Got hurt last year, and I think game 2 tore his ACL, and then just that was it. Like didn't play. Comes back this year. Dylan Moses could never cover anybody, but this year that was more apparent than anywhere else. Good teams found that immediately. Florida in the SEC championship found that and exploited it very quickly. I think he's a decent pass rusher. I don't think he's a tremendously good athlete. I don't think his best attribute is tackling, which I guess is fine. If you're going to be a Mike linebacker, you should be able to tackle. But I think the lack of coverage skills it's so egregiously bad that like Dylan Moses was getting like, based off of 2018, like this guy's a first round pick. And then like he showed up and it was like, are we sure? Like a lot of people are just going to go based off of the name value and put him in like the top 5 linebackers. Like Owusu Koromoa is better than him now. Zaven Collins is better than him now. Nick Bolton is better than him now. But like, I have him down with like Jabril Cox from LSU, the North Dakota State transfer, who is a great coverage linebacker. And it's like, would I rather have the guy that can cover in the 2021 NFL? Yes. Or would I rather have Dylan Moses, who like would have been the first overall pick in 1994? So I'm not a Dylan Moses fan. I think it's hard to declare for the draft after you tear your ACL. I do get that. Like,
I'm with PJ about
I
that.
think it's really tough to come out last year, but he did not. He didn't look good this year when he was in.
Also, when PJ puts it like that too, it's like he was going to either put his entire draft stock after tearing his ACL, he was going to put it in the combine. He put everything in his life would have been on the line would have been the combine. He put everything on the line on the combine, or he could have bet on himself and go out for another year and just got torched the way he did. I don't think either one of them would have benefited him because post ACL, having to work out and do all that stuff, I'm not sure how he would have showed. But he didn't show well this year either. He just kind of became a guy at Alabama, and Patrick Surtain became the guy. So I don't think he would have benefited from either.
And speaking of the NFL Combine, this is a point that I wanted to bring up as well. They just canceled the NFL Combine. Mm-hmm. No NFL Combine this year. So I want to throw it to you guys if you have a guy that you're thinking of who this affects the most. Because a couple of years back, DK Metcalf showed up at the Combine and went from drafted being who knows where to being a second-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks, and now is one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. And a lot of that was based on his performance at the Combine. PJ, is there a guy in your mind that the Combine being canceled hurts the most?
I can tell you who it helps the most, assuredly, is Devontae Smith. Because Devontae Smith now does not have to get on a scale in front of anybody and does not have to have his height measured in front of anybody. So teams can believe whatever they want to believe, which I think and he's not going to have to answer any questions about it. So I think Devontae Smith just lets the tape do the talking, which it's like, you won the Heisman. What do you want me to tell you? Like, the tape is phenomenal, but he no longer has to prove anything size related, which he will eventually have to prove that he's an NFL wide receiver size wise, but he doesn't have to go through the whole combine narrative. I think another guy that really works out for is Greg Rousseau, who allegedly beefed up to like 265 from 250 last year. We've never seen him play at 265. I'd like to see him move. Like, I'd like to see him run. I'd like to see him do anything, but that's not happening now. So I don't know. You're just going to have to go off of the 1 year when he had 16 and a half sacks or whatever it was, which, like, okay, tape looked okay, but now you gotta extrapolate. Like, all right, so he's got another 15 pounds on him. Do you think he can move like that? I don't know. The guy I actually think it hurts the most is Caleb Farley, another opt-out who didn't play this year. But track athlete, like super uber athletic guy who could have just put up like absurd numbers at the combine and talked himself into, I don't know if I would have done it going over Patrick Surtain, but we might get to that point already just based off his athletic ability. But if he came and like workout warriored the combine, I think Caleb Farley, especially after not playing this year, would have liked that opportunity.
LaPointe, you got
I got a couple guys. Cal, you know that I love my FCS programs and I love the little guy. And I don't even have anyone specific from the FCS. I just think it's FCS guys in general who could have gotten, maybe could have gotten an invite to show out on a big scale in front of all those people. And instead are going to have to depend on, maybe they're like a JMU or someone like that is going to have a pro day at their own school and hope that people show up. I think of the little guy right away who could have, a big pro day or could have a big combine because he had a big season. So I think the FCS kids in general hurt from Corona and then not having a combine. And so you won't see I don't think you'll see as many of the FCS kids taking the NFL draft this year. You'll go off of the more sure bet Power 5 kids than taking a chance on a kid from the FCS. And the other guy that I think of immediately is I think Travis Etienne could have absolutely made everyone forget about the bad games he had this year with a great combine. I mean, the dude is an athlete. He's unbelievably fast. He has good hands. So what he could have done at a combine, I don't know if he could have thrown up some reps, Could have had a great 40, all of these things, which he still could have at the Clemson Pro Day if they're doing a Pro Day. I think that could have been huge for him to make everyone forget about the bad year that he had and some of the bad performances that he had. And that could have been huge for Travis Etienne in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's all the time we have. PJ, before we go, I want you to give me one name that no one's talking about, but they should be. That's going to be a steal in the NFL draft.
I think we've actually kind of reached the peak of no one is talking about. I think people are beginning to talk about. I'll give you two. I'll give you one guy that I think should go in the first round that I think people are beginning to come around on. That would be Jalen Phillips, the Miami edge, who was the number one player in the class of 2017 and went to UCLA. The number one overall recruit went to UCLA, got concussed twice, retired from football, showed up at Miami last year, blew up practices, wasn't eligible because of transfer rules, and then saw the opening, the 6'7", 255-pound opening that Greg Rousseau created, slid right in and was the best edge for my money in the country this year. So I think he's beginning to rise. It's another guy who I would like to see at the combine, especially medically with 2 concussions. If he would checked out all right. But to me, he's my number one edge. I think he's a slam dunk first round pick, and I think people are going to begin to come around on that. But lower down the list, I'll give you 2. Ife Melifonwu from Syracuse, I think is beginning to get a lot of hype. He's not going to be our little secret anymore after this week. He's one of the 5 juniors at the Senior Bowl this week because he graduated. So I think he's going to be a really big deal after this week. I expect him to be pretty well. And the guy I keep coming back to, Amari Rogers. I mean, on the outside this year, filling in for Justin Ross. He's a real NFL player. Some NFL teams would be really happy with a guy that can play on special teams, return punts for you on day one, and be a hell of a slot receiver. So those would be my 3 guys that people should take a much deeper look into before the draft rolls around.
LaPointe, you got a name?
Isaac Rex, I love my BYU Cougars, and I think he's a tight end that could do some real damage in the NFL. It's 6'4", 250. He catches the ball unbelievably well. He had a great bowl game against UCF. He had a great quarterback in Zach Wilson this year. I think that Isaac Rex could absolutely be one of the top, 4 tight ends taken in the draft, but the combine would have really helped someone like that as well.